I'm pleased that Ariel Shapira is here with us. That was, like you said, the General Secretary during the whole process of renovating. And he really was one of the main persons and responsible for what happened. I want to also thank Lily, that together with Mario, you have such generosity, warmth, and commitment to support and be part of our museum. In Argentina, remembrance is a state of policy that has been consistent throughout all governments. We are the country that received the largest number of survivors in Latin America, and the only Latin American country which is member of the IRA, the International Remembrance Holocaust Alliance, which implies an important commitment with the memory of the Holocaust. This is the reason that in 2016, a new board decided to renovate the museum, not only the building, but especially a new exhibition with innovative technology and interactivity. We inaugurated on December 2019, and when we were prepared to open our doors to the schools, the public, the pandemic made us go home. This is when we started to reinvent ourselves, and among several virtual activities, we made this virtual visit 360. During 2020, in the pandemic, we managed to receive about 60,000 visitors in Zoom, mostly schools. Every year, we received in our museum thousands of students, educators, policemen, judges, with no cost for them. This is why we need all the help we can get in order to allow us to continue the education. To understand what happened allows us to build a better world. And thank you everyone for participating. And Ari, if you want to say something, you're welcome before we give the microphone to Eliana and Julieta.
Thank you everybody for being here. Not much to add. I think that it was an interesting opportunity to decide why, as Mario said, every museum has a why here, why now, because the Holocaust happened many years ago. So why here and why now? And Argentina is one of the countries that had the two of the largest terrorist attacks, actually, to the Jewish communities in the last 20 years, 30 years. And although everybody, we believe that everybody knows about the history of the Holocaust, it's unknown. I mean, most of the people doesn't know. I mean, most of the people here in Buenos Aires, when they come to the museum, they find out that we are not hundreds of millions Jews in the world, and that we are not millions of Jews in Argentina, but we are only a few thousands. And it's very important for us to teach what happened. So that is the reason why here, why now. And it was a huge opportunity that we had to make not a history process, but mainly to build experiences. I mean, the main, as Mario said, you're highly invited to visit. It would be great if you can remember something about the history when you visit it, but the museum. But most important is that you leave the exhibition with a different sense, with a different commitment, and with a different understanding. So that's the goal. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present this to you.
Thank you, Ariel, for being so eloquent and so clear. We can feel your passion. I also want to thank Jonathan Karchenbaum, who is also head of the museum, is with us. And I need to tell something because I'm the rabbi, so I can't say that. I'm Ariel's wife, friend for 52 years, Silvina, who is there. So together as a family, they have a strong commitment to make this museum a reality. And I'm very proud that one of my friends is so involved. So with no further ado, let's go to our virtual tour.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the virtual version of the Holocaust Museum of Buenos Aires. I'm Eliana, and with Julieta we are going to do this virtual tour. I'm going to start by sharing my screen to show you the museum. I think that you can see this right now. Okay, great. So this is the entrance to the building and to the exhibition. You recently, Fabiana and Ariel, spoke about the renovation process that we went through the past 3 years. So we are going just to start by going through this tour, and we're going to start with this introductory video, and then Julieta will continue with the tour.
seines besten Blutes fühlen und dieses Wissen unterführen. Immer nur eins gekannt. Zurück zum Führer und dann für den Führer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julieta. I'll be guiding you after this brief and sad summary of what we're going to see in the museum today. We'll start the tour with the Jewish life before the Nazi regime. Here we have different pictures and also videos about the Jewish life in Europe at those times. We can see in the different pictures how diverse was the Jewish life regarding the religious, cultural, economic issues. And what we can see generally is that Jews living in Western Europe, in places such as France, the UK, Netherlands, Germany, the Jews adopted their country's culture and they were assimilated and integrated to the society, while in Eastern Europe, Jews lived as a minority group in shtetls where they spoke Yiddish and preserved their religious traditions. Anyway, when Hitler came to power, it didn't matter in what people believed or any possible distinctions. For the Nazis, Judaism was a race that was transmitted through blood. So we'll continue with Hitler's rise to power. Here we usually show a video that explains briefly how Hitler came to power, but it is in Spanish. Jonathan left the link if in the case that you want to see it in English, the version in English. But briefly speaking, Hitler came to power in a democratic way. He was named by the President Hindenburg as a counselor, and he came to power democratically in a context of economic crisis after the 1929 crisis that left Germany in terrible conditions with a high disoccupation rate, poverty, and desperation that made a fertile field for the Nazi speech, who gained protagonism as an alternative to communism. Although Hitler did not get the parliamentary majority, this crisis motivated President Paul von Hindenburg to name Hitler as chancellor on January 30, 1933. Here we also have some objects, like for example, Hitler's book that is called Mein Kampf in German, or My Fight in English, where Hitler wrote about his ideology, about his anti-Semitic, anti-communist, anti-democratic ideas. And this shows that Hitler did not hide his ideas. He did not came to power like lying. He came to power with expressly stating his hate speech and ideas. Anyway, while he came to power in a democratic way, as soon as the government started, it started to consolidate a dictatorship. And this dictatorship was consolidated with two factors. One is terror and another is consensus. Regarding terror, the Nazis' objective was to create a uniform national community, and in that sense, they started with a segregation policy against the state enemies. For example, and principally the communists and social democrats, who were sent to concentration camps. The first concentration camp opened on March 1933, a few months after Hitler came to power. And this also, the fact that there were concentration camps made the rest of the population to have terror and threaten the rest of the population. And that's why many people remain silent, because there was a real threat that in case that you were opposing to the Nazi regime, you will be sent to concentration camps. There in the screen, you can see how the prisoners at the concentration camps were marked with a different colored triangle according to which group they belong, like politicians, or for example, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses. And in each one of the triangles, we have some information and images of each of the groups. Regarding consensus, Hitler destroyed the democratic system, and one of the things that he did was passing by the parliament an enabling act which allowed the president and the chancellor to govern by decree. On 1934, Hindenburg died, so he concentrated all the power in himself, and also the fact that there was a huge economic recovery with unemployment elimination, made that many people supported Hitler. So many people, although they did not support his hate ideas or his anti-Semitic ideas, many of them supported him because of his economical policy, which actually made a recovery for Germany. And also something that generated this consensus was breaking the Treaty of Versailles, which Germany was obliged to sign after the First World War, and for the Germans was like a big humiliation. Continuing to the anti-Semitic policy, in the first years between 1933, when Hitler came to power, and 1939, the objective, the aim that the Nazis had regarding the Jews was making the Jews to emigrate, to go out of Germany. In that sense, they started with a segregation policy, excluding the Jews from every economic, cultural, social issue, so that they wanted to go from themselves. Here in the screen, we have some examples. They're in Spanish, of course, but maybe with the symbols you can figure it out. But the prohibitions regarding the Jews were in every area of life. For example, regarding the jobs, Jews could not hold public positions, could not be lawyers, they could not be veterinarians, they could not be teachers, or for example, regarding like the social life, they could not go to the beach, they could not go to cinemas or to theaters. Regarding economic issues, they could not sign contracts. In some cases, they had to give up their value objects, among other things. And regarding their civil life, they could not marry people who were not Jews, they could not raise the German flag, they took out from them the German citizenship. So all these things wanted to exclude the Jews from the German community and had this aim of making them emigrate. Also, these measures were supported with the propaganda, that here we have some examples of propaganda that were clearly anti-Semitic. For example, if you go a little bit down, here a little bit higher, the one that of the flags. Here, for example, it says that behind the enemies, proposing that the enemies are the capitalism and communism, says that behind the enemies is the Jew. So here is the blame game against the Jews, saying that they are the guilty ones for everything that happens wrong in the world. Also with child books, for example, a very famous one called the Poison Mushroom, which is this one is the cover page. All these had the same aim, that is to exclude the Jews and also to create this image and educate the society to hate them and by blaming them from all the bad things happening in Germany. And one image that is very graphic from this is the one of the woman in that bench that is sitting in a bench that says "Only for Jews," and that is painted in yellow. As I said, all this had the aim that the Jews emigrate. The fact is that till 1938, only 25% of the Jews in Germany emigrate, and we can ask ourselves why they did not emigrate with all these measures. And we can think about many reasons, but mainly that they could not imagine, not even in their worst nightmare, what was going to happen next. No one could ever imagine the gas chambers or the extermination camps, and that all of them thought that it was going to get better, that this government will end someday, and nobody imagined. Also, there were economic and migratory restraints that made that the Jews kept in Germany. In 1938, there was a radicalization regarding the anti-Semitic policy because of many factors, but mainly because of the Night of the Broken Glasses, or the Kristallnacht, where the Nazis made a pogrom or an attack against Jewish people and Jewish institutions all along Germany and also all along Austria, which was already annexed by 1938. And that was like a great escalation of the violence that was happening till now. Here we can see a video with some images about this, about the Kristallnacht that show how it was. And the Kristallnacht made somehow that more Jews want to emigrate. So emigration hired up by 1938, and about 50% of the Jews, of the German Jews, emigrated by the beginning of World War II in 1939. Here we have some of the personalities of famous people that emigrated at those times. For example, Hannah Arendt or Martin Buber, Freud, or also Anne Frank. But the case of Anne Frank also shows us that emigration was not the solution every time, because we know how Anne Frank ends, that when the Nazis invaded in the Netherlands, she and her family were sent to concentration camps. So to continue about emigration, Eli will continue talking about emigration and Argentinian context at this time.
Yes, thank you, Juli. This is an Holocaust museum, but it is placed in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. So for us, it is important to let our public know what was happening in Argentina during that time. And along the exhibition, we have different aspects. We show different aspects that relate the Argentina with the Nazism, with the war, with the Holocaust, with the post-war period. And here we have this map in red. I will try to zoom in. We have this map, and this shows the immigration of the German Jews, and it places Argentina here with a big number, a high number, and this shows that during the 1930s, Argentina was the most chosen destination in Latin America and the fourth most chosen worldwide. And also Argentina as a place of refuge, because a lot of Jewish refugees came to Argentina during this period of time. So here we start talking about what was happening in Argentina during the 1930s. Before I continue with that, I would like you to show, we have along the exhibition, we have these devices, and we have these devices show some clips with the voices of the Holocaust survivors who came after to Argentina. So with small clips, they are in Spanish.
Nunca he sabido
just to show
hasta
you,
el año 39
we can hear some experiences of the survivors during the Holocaust. In this case, in relation with these years, 1930s, the Kristallnacht and the migration that we are talking about right now, but along all the exhibition, you have another ones and with different experiences related to the historic event that we tell in that room. And here I turn around and to show what was happening in Argentina during that time, I will use one example, this big photograph. This photograph was taken during a Nazi rally in the Luna Park Stadium here in Buenos Aires in Argentina on April 10, 1938. It was organized by the German embassy and the local National Socialist Party to celebrate the annexation of Austria to the German Reich, to Nazi Germany. Although it was opposed by a big part of Argentine society, it took place anyway as it was planned. But we have here in this screen that shows some experiences related to Nazism in Argentina and some experiences that oppose the Nazism in Argentina. We have here this pamphlet that it's an invitation from some groups who oppose to what was going on in the stadium in the Luna Park, and these opponents invite the public for an act of repudiation of what was going on in the Luna Park. So in a square near the Luna Park, they also they made opposition to what was going on. So here is what we can see that was happening in Argentina. Now Argentina was far from the conflict and of what was going on in Europe at that time, and we can find here during that time both manifestations, some that were more close to the Nazism and the nationalism, and others that were opposed to what was going on in Europe. Another thing that we show in relation to what was going on in Argentina, it's unfortunately we can't show it in this virtual tour, but I want to present to you. This is how the press and the newspapers showed what was going on in Europe, and it has some news clipping from 6 different newspapers, and you can see how these newspapers told the public here in Argentina the news about the Nazism, the Hitler, the Holocaust, and so on.
Mm.
And before going through the World War II, we also have this military jacket that belonged to Santiago Knight. He was an Argentinian soldier of English origin that in 1943 enlisted to fight in the British Army. And the one beside it, it has, you can't see it from here, but it has an insignia right here on the side, that says Argentina, and that this person belonged to Argentina and it has Argentine nationality. And this one is from his wife. She was English. They got married when he was in England, and then afterwards both came here and they started a new life. And it was their daughter, Patricia, who donated these uniforms to the museum. So Juli can continue with the World War II.
Okay, so World War II started on 1939 with the German invasion of Poland. And with the German invasion of Poland, we can see like 2 main events regarding the extermination of other groups that are not Jewish people. On one hand, we have the extermination of Polish intelligence. That means like politicians or the military of Poland. And on the other hand, we can see the extermination of people with disabilities in the Nazi occupied territory. The Nazi thought about that the people with disabilities were like a useless mouth, that they cost money to the state and that they did nothing, so they decided to exterminate them. Till the public opinion started suspecting about this extermination, so they like lowered the extermination and made it in a more covered way. But the people with disabilities started to be exterminated when World War II started too. Regarding to anti-Semitic policy, we also see that in 1939 it was imposed for the Jewish to have in their clothes on the street the Star of David, a Jewish symbol that we like a lot, but at this time was used to humiliate the Jews, so that they carried it in when they went out. And what this part of the museum wants to show also is the universality of the Holocaust, that every place where the Nazis occupied, they imposed the restrictions they started imposing in Germany. Here we see that in different countries they use this star. We can see the different like forms of this star in every country, and also a picture of a person using that star in particular. With the invasion of Poland, the Nazis had to change their policy against the Jews, and they decided to install ghettos. They installed among approximately 1,000 ghettos, all in Eastern Europe, with the aim of keeping them a part of the population. The objective was not to exterminate them, but to see what to do till they take a final decision of what to do with the Jews, that we all know that it was to exterminate them. But meanwhile, they have them in ghettos that were like parts of the city that were locked for the Jews. They could not go out, and they lived in terrible conditions. Here in the screen we have like what was like the life in the ghettos. We have on one hand what the conditions imposed by the Nazis, that was hunger, overcrowding, forced labor, and also diseases, with different images in each one of the things. And also we have that the Jews resisted to these conditions. They wanted to keep living, so they decided to organize a cultural and pacific resistance, which consisted in different activities, such as keeping on with their religious traditions, or making cultural activities such as having like musicians or theater plays, and also like disseminating newspaper or making exchange with like illegal exchanges of food outside the ghetto, among other activities that led the Jews to give some faith and maintain themselves in those horrible conditions in a better way, that those in the best way possible they could be. Also, regarding the ghettos, we have a sensorial or sensory experience here that it simulates what was the life like in the ghettos. The videos here were videos that were recorded at the Warsaw ghetto. They are real videos, and there are very shocking images. And also when you are in the museum and you stand there, you feel like it is over you, it is all around you. So you're thinking somehow, of course, we can never imagine how it was like to be there, but we can imagine a little better how it was like to be there in the ghetto. So we can see, for example, these kids that made a contraband of food. We can also see that the persons that appear in the video are in very bad physical conditions, like because of the hunger, because of the conditions, like children living in the streets also. So it has a very big impact, more when you are there, but you can also see it here that it was very hard, the life in the ghettos. And although the aim from the Nazi aim was not to exterminate the Jews here, many of them died because of the conditions that were imposed by the Nazis. What is also impacting here is that sometimes you feel like they are seeing you, because it was in real life that they were recording them, so they looked at the camera, so when you're there, you feel like they see you. Well, we continue, and we are going to go upstairs. And now we'll go to a third stage in the Nazis' plan, and that started when Germany invaded the Soviet Union on June 1941. And now, yes, we can talk about an extermination plan. The extermination plan started in the Soviet Union, and it was against like the worst enemy for the Nazis, that were the communist Jews. That was like the worst you could be for the Nazis. And the first way of killing Jews in this case was with mobile extermination units called the Einsatzgruppen that went like behind the army while the army occupied the Soviet Union. The Einsatzgruppen go behind and killed all the Jewish people living in each one of the cities that they occupied. The way of killing was by firearms. Usually they made the Jews to cave their own graves, like mass graves, and they made them step one beside the other, and they shot them dead. That here you can see like a little bit of the videos. There were 4 groups of Einsatzgruppen, A, B, C, and D, that depended on the geographical zone. And well, you can see here that this terrible way of killing. This started to change when at the ending of 1941, the Nazis took the decision to kill all the Jewish people in Europe, and it was a little bit hard to kill them by shooting them like one by one, because of many reasons, but also because the perpetrators started to have like some psychological problems because they were killing people all the time. So they decided to change the way they were killing. This also shows us that the perpetrators were also human beings, and that is something that has to scare us, because human beings were the ones that did this, so human beings can do this again. Well, when they take the decision to kill all the Jews in 1941 at the end, and at the beginning of 1942, it took place the Wannsee Conference, where the Nazis met to plan how they were going to do this of killing all the Jews in Europe, and they took the decision of creating the extermination camps with the gas chambers. Here on the front, we can see how many Jews they calculated to be in Europe. They calculated that in Europe there were more than 11 million Jews, counting also the countries, Jews in the countries that they did not occupy, such as the United Kingdom. Regarding the final solution, that's how they call them, first of all, they had to plan how to take the Jews to these extermination camps, and that's how where we talk about the deportation, that was in terrible conditions, in trains that were overcrowded, that people that in trips that last days and days, that without food, without water, making their necessities in there. Many people died in there, so it was in very in terrible conditions how they were transferred to the camps. Then we have like different types of camps. Now we'll see it clearly in the screen. There were the concentration camps, that the concentration camps started opening at the beginning of the Nazi regime in 1933, that are the pink ones. Here there are only some of the camps, not every camp. And then we have like the extermination camps, that are the yellow ones, and the extermination and concentration camps, that are the violet ones. There were like different ways of killing. In the case of the extermination camps, when they arrived, they went directly to the gas chamber. So there was like no chance to survive to those camps. So the ones that survived were the ones that rised up against the Nazis, but if not, there was no chance to survive. Then we have the camps such like Auschwitz, probably the most famous camp. Auschwitz was a concentration and extermination camp, was very big. It was divided in 3 camps. And in the case of Auschwitz, when the people arrived, they were divided between the ones that were going to the concentration camps. Most of them were like young people that could do forced labor, and the ones that were going directly to the gas chambers, that were like old people, children, pregnant women, and people that generally could not do those kind of works. Here we also have, on one hand, how was the life of the perpetrators there in the camp. We can see them, maybe it's not clear here, but you can see them like laughing or joking. And on the other hand, we have some survivors with like brief phrases of their testimonies. Regarding the life in the camps generally, particularly in Auschwitz, but generally, we can see that the prisoners were obliged to use this kind of uniforms. In the case of Auschwitz particularly, they were tattooed a number, and that was like very hard because they were not more people with a name, they were numbers, and that contributed to the humanization of the victims. We can see like the terrible conditions. I think this drawing is terrible, where the Nazis are separating a kid from their father. We can see how they hit them, how they were the forced labors. Also, we can see the hunger because they were very, very thin, and all the conditions that were terrible. Here is the crematorium, because after the gas chambers, the bodies were taken to the crematoriums. So life in the camp was terrible, really, really terrible, and really, really hard to survive. Nevertheless, there was resistance also in the camp. We can see that since the final solution, where many Jews started to know that they were going to be killed, some of them decided to resist with arms. Not only like in the ghettos, that was a pacific resistance, but also with arms. Most of them knew that they would not beat the Nazis because they were less armed, they were in bad physical conditions, and the Nazi army was like the best army in the world, but they wanted to fight and die with dignity. So we can see that armed resistance occurred at the ghettos, at the camps, concentration and extermination camps, and also at the woods, the ones that we call the partisans. Here we have some examples of each of these resistance that we can see in particular cases. Finally, here we have like much more information, but it is difficult to see all of these in such a few time. But we also have a part that shows about the Nazi propaganda at those times, also how the Nazis used football games as propaganda. We also have a part that tells about the children at those times, and also what was the knowledge of all this plan around the world at those times. And here we have like an Auschwitz plan, or how do you say, a miniature, like a digital miniature of how was Auschwitz, Auschwitz II in this case, Auschwitz-Birkenau, to like go around Auschwitz in this case. Finally, the end of the Holocaust, we can say is with the death marches, when the Nazis saw that they were losing the war and that the Soviets and the British and the Americans were liberating the camps, they decided to make the prisoners, most of them from Auschwitz, but also from other camps, to march and to walk till they reached camps that were not liberated yet, most of them in Germany, and walk and walk and walk. This was in January, that is winter, very cold winter in Germany and in Poland, and they make them walk in the worst conditions, because this was after many years of concentration camps, so people were really in bad conditions, and they made them walk till they reached some other camp. Many people died in these marches because of the conditions, and some of them survived, but it was like a very hard time, and according to some survivors' experiences, this was like the worst experience in the Holocaust. Finally, the war ended on May. The war in Europe, because the war continued regarding the USA and Japan, but the war in Europe ended May 1945 with the bombing of Berlin, and well, we know what happened next, the Cold War and the division of Germany, and very important, the creation of the UN and human rights, universal human rights, that were like a good consequence, if one can say after these terrible things that happened and the Nazis made. Now Eli will continue with Argentina, what happened at those times too.
Okay, yes, in this room, we continue letting our public know what was happening in Argentina during that time. We have first this timeline with some events during those years. Some of them we mentioned before. Maybe the more important ones are that the position adopted by the Argentine government was the neutrality during the war. But in January 1944, is what it says here, Argentina broke off the diplomatic relations with Germany and Japan, and soon after the capture of Argentine Jews from all over Europe was ordered, and that was an immediate consequence of this rupture in the diplomatic relations. And in March 1945, few months before the war ended, Argentina declared the war to Japan and Germany again, and this is what this front cover of a newspaper says. Also, another aspect that is important related to Argentina during that time is that the victims, the Argentine victims of Nazism. By the time we opened this exhibition, the studies show that at least 1,100 Argentine people were victims of Nazism in different ways. Here we have 6 stories, and the other ones are in some devices, or you can find them on our website. And here I would like to speak of, of one of them. This is, okay, I'm sorry. This is Meir Berliner. We don't have a picture of him, but he did an important act of resistance. He was deported to the Treblinka extermination camp, and there in September 1942 he killed an SS guard in the camp. So it was an important act of resistance, and it says that it was later this act inspired the revolt in the Treblinka extermination camp. So we have a lot of stories about victims, Argentine victims of Nazism. This part of Argentine story, maybe it's not so known, so this is why we tell it here. And also we continue with this relation between between Argentina and the Holocaust, and we are in the post-war period, and as Julieta told us, the war ended, and we have these two devices that are placed in opposite directions, one from the other one. In this one, we tell some stories about the criminals who came to Argentina after the war. Maybe we have Eichmann is the most known one, then Priebke or Mengele. The vast majority of them entered here with false names, and the study showed that 180 war criminals or collaborators entered Argentina during the post-war period. On the other hand, and in front of that device, we have another one that shows the survivors who came to Argentina after the war and after the Holocaust. This is a work in progress, but our aim is to put here all the names and stories of the survivors who came here in Argentina. It's difficult to establish the exact number of the survivors who came here. We think that an estimation is that 4,700 Jews came to Argentina or entered Argentina between 1945 and 1949. So we are still looking for all of the names and the stories. Here you have the name and brief story of what each of them passed through. And also another space that connects Argentina with the Holocaust or with Nazism and the post-war period is this room. In this room, we talk about Eichmann, of Adolf Eichmann, how he lived in Argentina for 10 years, and how he was found here and captured and taken to Israel for justice. We have here the safe conduct and the document he used to enter Argentina with another name, with the name of Ricardo Clement in 1950. He spent here, as I said, 10 years. He had different jobs. And in 1960, he was taken by the Israeli intelligence service, the Mossad, to Israel for his trial. This trial, again, we have here some kind of installation with the trial, with the different voices of the trial, the testimonies, the survivor testimonies that spoke during the trial, and it was a big moment for them because it was almost the first time that they told the world what they lived through. And of course, we have Eichmann Pérez and what he was doing during the trial. So here we continue with this room, Uli.
Yes, here we have like our reflection room where we can see from upstairs what we saw before from the final solution. And here you can see names and the country they belong from. They are the victims of the Holocaust, the names of the victims. Of course, here it's a like still image, but when you are there, the names go up and pass through, and it's very shocking because when then you can see that to see one of those names again, you have to wait like 700 days. So that gives us a little bit of dimension of what was the Holocaust, what was 6 million Jews killed by the Nazis, that sometimes it's not very easy to imagine how many people are 6 million people, because we have never seen 6 million people together, but more it's important not to think only about the number, but to think that each one of those 6 million people were one person that had a family, that had a life, that had dreams, and they were taken away because of the hate and the intolerance and discrimination from the Nazis. And this is like a way of honoring them by remembering their names and the places they belong to. We are almost about to finish, but we can't finish without talking about the light here in the Holocaust, that were the rescuers, or also known as the righteous among nations. People that did not look to another side and decided to help at least one Jew, to help them, because they saw that they were in a terrible situation. And there were many ways of helping, like for example, getting some passports for them to emigrate, or getting them the money to emigrate, or also giving them like false identities so that they pass like Catholics and not Jews, also hiding them in their houses, and many other ways of helping. And it's important to remark that we have rescuers from different nationalities, also Latin American nationalities, from different parts of the world. We also have rescuers from different religions, from different genders. So we can see that also helping is part of the human condition. And this is the example we want to show in the museum, and this is why we end our tour here. Now we can go down and also see something similar to these actions, and was how the Muslim community helped the Jews to preserve this Sefer Torah. This Sefer Torah was written among the 13th and 16th century in Spain, when the Jewish were expelled from Spain. It was taken to the Shalom community in the Rhodes Island, and during the Holocaust, the Muslim community preserved this Sefer Torah from the Nazis. So I think that it's a very moving object to have here. It arrived to Argentina at the 1980s to the Shalom community in Buenos Aires, and last year was handed to the museum. So thanks to the Muslim community solidarity, this object was saved from the Nazis' destructive spirit and was kept, and we can have it now here. And we are almost ending. Here we have a mirror that says that the one that saves one life saves the entire world. And the idea is that when you are there in the museum, you reflect yourself with the rescuers, because as I said before, is the example we want our visitors to keep with. In a context that was very terrible, with people doing terrible things and killing people and persecuting people, there were people that helped each other. So this solidarity spirit is the one we want to keep. And also almost ending also, I think that it's important to reflect about the Holocaust. Maybe it is impossible to put ourselves in the victim's shoes or to try to understand why the Nazis did this. But our commitment is to know what happened, to study it, to become aware, to raise awareness. And this is because the Holocaust is not just something that happened in history in the past. It is not unconnected with things that happen in our everyday life. The ones who did this were humans. The victims were humans. Hate, discrimination, political manipulation neither started nor ended with the Nazis. They are still present in our times. That's why we have to learn from the Holocaust, because as it is said, the ones that don't remember their history are condemned to repeat it. And this history is the humanity's history. So as being human beings, we have this duty to remember and to do something about the different injustices and discriminations that happens nowadays. and Eli will end up the tour showing that this is still happening.
Yes, we have here our memory and remembrance room. And as Juli just told us, there are still lessons that we need as a society to learn from what happened here in the Holocaust. So, and in this room, we have this object. This is a typewriter. It was rescued from the terrorist attack in the AMIA here in Buenos Aires. The AMIA is an organization that centers the Jewish life, or a big part of Jewish life here in Argentina. And it was attacked in 1994. And this was an event that it is much closer to us than the Holocaust. And this typewriter here also symbolizes the hatred, the lessons that we need to learn, and that our mission, the museum mission, is still, we need to still continue with that, because we need to fight the discrimination, we need to fight the hatred, and we need to build an inclusive, democratic, social, solidarity-based society. And unfortunately, that mission is, we need to continue doing that. So here we are almost done. Mario, I know you want to say some words.
Wow. Wow. I'm absolutely impressed. I did the tour preparing for tonight. Eliana was kind enough to show me and made a tour for us before, but it's different to do it by myself and to do it with my community. So when I say my communities, I want to rephrase it. My communities. You are my community, Argentina, and Miami is my community. Just to let you know, Juli and Eliana, first, thank you for your dedication and how eloquent you are. Betora was generous enough to receive like 700 Argentinians in the year 2000, 2001, 2002. Some of us came with nothing. Some of us came just to pursue a dream. And in our days, we speak a lot about antibodies. One of the main antibodies that we Jews have, I call it, is a calendar and a community. And we are having this activity almost a couple of days before Passover. And some of us, you know, we do it as tradition, but who believe that the story really happened? And what you are doing with the Holocaust Museum is when somebody made there in 50 years or in 100 years from today to say, I don't know if this happened. You say, you don't know, come. What's the name of the street? Montevideo? Come to Montevideo and I will show you, what happened. So what you are doing is a sacred job to ensure that the story is not forgotten, that ensure the connection between the Jewish community and the rest of the community in Argentina, and to give the possibility that every Jew in the world, when it comes to Buenos Aires, feels a little bit more home. Now, the level of the two of you, the level of what you showed us, it's absolutely astonishing. And I can tell you that 60 people were in the little squares, 5 left because they need to say Kaddish, but people are mesmerized listening to you. And it's only because of me that we stop it at 7:10, because they were ready to go further, but we prefer to leave you with more than overwhelming you. I just want to appeal to my friends in the Zoom. If you want this work to continue, we personally will make a donation of $360 in honor of Julieta and Eliana, but I expect everybody who can in the Zoom, 10, 5, 18, you name it, whatever you can do can help to ensure that the museum continues to preserve this level, which is unique in the world. We are in the top 5 Holocaust museum in the world. And they didn't have the chance yet to show, because the pandemic hit and people, but they are doing an amazing job virtually with schools, etc. So I want to thank you once again to the authorities of the museum, to all of you, almost 10 people join us today. And if you want to make a donation, Venmo to the social action team at Beitora. It's already there. Please keep this sign for a couple more minutes so people can do it. Once again, thank you, Julieta. Thank you, Eliana. Thank you, Fabiana. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you to everybody that make this happen. You know, I'm very moved and I'm very thankful. We have here people who are second generation Isieta, people who lost the entire family in the Holocaust. I'm the grandson of one of the 6 million. So I cannot thank you enough for, in my city, where I walk the street of those places thousands of times, when I saw that typewriting machine, when my parents used to perform Jewish theater in Pasteur 633, this is our story. And this is the story of every person in this Zoom. So thank you for the bottom of our heart. And we will continue the relationship for sure with the museum in Argentina. Thank you, everybody.
Kola kavod.
Kola kavod.
It was wonderful, wonderful.
Good.
Beautiful.
Very, very thorough. Incredible.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we have to make another trip